All right, and we're here with our very first episode of what we're thinking of calling the Optimist Urbanist, right? So just go over kind of the purpose of our podcast since this is the very beginning. We are two dudes who just finished up our planning education.
Master's degrees.
Yeah, our planning master's degrees. And, we're getting into the working world and stuff, but the working world of planning is a lot different than the educational side of it. And so, kind of, at least what my purpose with doing this is to, stay sharp on the educational stuff and on, the theory, because there's not a whole lot of theory in the working world. You're just kind of doing stuff, right? but keeping up on theory, keeping up on stuff that comes out of the APA, stuff that comes out of literature and everything, right? So there's that, but it's also, based on the title, the point is to spread a little positivity in the world about city planning, especially here in the United States, because a lot of the current YouTube channels, and there's nothing wrong with them. I love all of them. I watch all those guys, right? But there's a lot of negativity about American cities and why American cities are so bad and why you should just move to Europe now, but obviously not everybody can do that. So just to keep people from getting in their heads too much about the negativity of the world, of American cities and their planning, we wanted to be a little more positive about things here. And that being said, this is not just copium. I would call this a little more of hopium.
Good. We want to push the conversation to more positive outcomes, and even explore ideas of how you could transform cities through policy and ideas and design.
Right. And the idea of transformation, you're not going to see it overnight, right? You're not going to see your town or your suburb go from car dependent nightmare to walkable European paradise overnight. Obviously it takes a really long time to undo those things, but just getting a little bit, just having your little slice of walkability in life is really, really important. And there are a lot of areas in U.S. cities that are like that, and some of course the older U.S. cities like Philadelphia, New York are very walkable and very transit oriented, but we are located in the godforsaken Sun Belt.
Desert.
Yeah.
Southwest.
Yeah, which, American cities get a bad rep and Sun Belt cities get a particularly terrible rep. But I don't know, we enjoy life out here, right?
Well, the mountains are really pretty. I would like the city to complement the natural beauty of the natural environment, instead of basically overrunning it with stroads and subdivisions that really don't really take into account the scale of the place or the natural environment, and sort of just blades the whole area.
Right. Of course, right? You want to kind of be able to take your city in a little bit more. And that is a point that's really important is when you are driving just really, really fast past your city, right, and through your city, you don't notice kind of just what is actually going on. Right? You're just going past things. You're going through things. You're not taking things in because you're just focused on what's ahead. Right? When you drive, you do have a sense of tunnel vision because you have to. You can't be looking around too much.
Right.
Which is difficult in Arizona to not want to look around you. There's a lot of beautiful landscapes and sceneries around you, and you want to take a minute to be able to look. And if you were able to walk around the city a little bit more, and when in the areas that you can, because they do exist, in the areas that you can, it's really nice. So with that, we can get into kind of what we wanted to talk about as the focus of our first episode, not just introducing ourselves and the topics and our purpose, but this concept of the 15-minute city, right? And this whole idea that everything can be kind of wrapped together into this little package. So I don't know if you want to introduce the concept a little bit more than just that.
Well, essentially it's building cities in a way where everything is within roughly a 15-minute walk of where you live. So it's about accessibility in terms of you could walk 15 minutes to get to necessities like the store, the grocery store, or even work. But it's really about creating that accessibility. A lot of times cities really, they build their infrastructure, they widen roads, and basically build all this stuff so that people can to kind of sort of like facilitate an easier, quicker flow to your job. Say it might be across town,
Right.
and so then you end up with these big strody streets. The goal is to really bring everything closer together, so you don't always have to be getting in your car and going to those places, but they kind of come to you.
Right. So, two things on that. One, when we're talking 15 minutes, we mean a 15-minute walk.
Yeah.
Correct? Not even a 15-minute bike ride. We mean a 15-minute walk.
I think so, yeah.
Because, I mean, a 15-minute bike ride is also not bad, right?
No.
And even in most cases, a 15-minute drive is not bad. Now, a lot of people commute way more than 15 minutes to work driving, right? People commute up to an hour and stuff. I mean, the average commute in America is what, over 20 miles? That's just something that I'm pulling out. I don't know that confirmed exactly or not, but the average commute in the U.S. is fairly far. I believe it's certainly much more than a 15-minute drive. Are you looking it up right now?
Yeah.
So a 15-minute walk everywhere is like the golden idea, right? Is that you don't even have to have a bike. You can just walk places. But yeah, so, and then my other point, if you have a figure.
Oh yeah, so 30% of Americans, the average commute is 15 to 29 minutes.
Okay.
And then 17% of Americans have 30 to 59 minutes, and 4% 60 to 119 minutes. Which
right.
I feel terrible for those people that have those 119-minute commutes.
But you hear that second interval there, that
30 to 59.
30 to 59, so 30 minutes to an hour, basically. That's a big jump. If you're in that bucket on the low end, that's still not too bad. But if you're on that bucket on the high end, that's really rough.
Yeah.
A half-hour commute versus an hour commute is really a huge difference, but they put those people in the same bucket. So,
from the census report, it says that it's rising. The commute times are actually rising, and in 2019, the average one-way commute in the United States increased to 27.6 minutes.
Right. Now, 2019, right before the pandemic,
right.
Obviously all the work from home stuff that happened obviously has died down a ton, and we're kind of not really doing that too much anymore. But there are still, I feel like there's still more people that work from home than ever before, even now, right? But obviously that really changed up the whole commute time thing. And I mean, zero commute. Some people like that, but some people like to have a little bit of a commute, and that's where you kind of get into this magical window of like a 15-minute commute being kind of perfect, where it's not too long. It's this kind of Goldilocks magical number that people don't mind having to go a little bit out of their home to get to work, right? You want your work to be in a different space than home, but you don't want it to be too far.
Yeah.
So that's that. And then my second thing is, you're talking about stroads. Explain what a stroad is for those who may not understand.
Stroad. So that's basically portmanteau, street and road, essentially.
Yeah.
They are wide, car-oriented. They also have businesses along them. So we're looking at like 4 to 6 or more lanes, and lined with parking lots and curb cuts where cars can go in. So your average suburban arterial, really, to illustrate it. Not great for riding your bike down. Not great, not comfortable for walking.
Right.
You're looking at, speeds, high speeds.
Yeah.
35, 40, but people usually go faster because the design facilitates faster travel because they have really wide lanes.
Except though when you have to turn into your parking lot.
Except when you turn into your parking lot.
And then that's what kind of creates the danger with stroads. And I'll explain too, to go back even a little bit further, there is a difference between a street and a road, right? Not everybody knows that. Where a street is like a smaller place that you would drive down, right? Typically like a residential area would have like a street, right? And then a road is more meant for moving cars quickly, right? So the term stroad, to the best of my ability to understand it, is combining those two things, in that streets would typically have businesses on them and be nice, slow areas to drive, like a main street, right? And then a road would be a fast-moving area. So it's essentially a stroad is a fast-moving area with businesses. And so that creates a lot of problems. As you said, they're not very fun to walk on, not only because of all the noise pollution and the fear of somebody maybe going up on the sidewalk, but just also that they tend to be lacking shade. You know, we are here in the Sun Belt, and so a lot of these areas lack shade, all kinds of stuff like that. So when he's talking about stroads, it's a very uncomfortable way to design a city, and it might be all right for driving. I don't think it is. I think that they're very, very stressful to drive on.
Stroads are?
Yes. I think they're very stressful to drive on. And they're also very stressful to bike or walk on. So it's just poor design.
All the way around.
All the way around, right? For any mode. So stroads are a big no-no in my book, right? And there are areas that are not stroady, right? You know.
Yeah. Anywhere, like downtown. You're older downtown, right?
Yeah.
Stroads.
Right, because it was likely built before a lot of the stroads were built, and if it wasn't bulldozed and turned into stroads, then hopefully, right? But so the point is that downtown and a nice, slower main street becomes a place to drive to instead of through.
And bringing it back to 15-minute cities, so downtowns might be the closest approximation of a 15-minute city that people have experienced. Providing that downtowns actually have all of the things that you need, like a grocery store. Some downtowns, especially if they've been neglected, don't have like a supermarket.
Right. So, like in Tucson, there is a little grocery store downtown. It's called like Johnny Garcia's or something. It has like a big cherry on their sign, but it's not quite full service, I wouldn't call it, because like you can't get absolutely everything there, but it definitely serves a good purpose, right? And if you need something like kind of in a pinch, right, then it's definitely a good place to get something. But and they do have like a deli there and everything, right? So it has all that, but it's just not very big, and it's a little more expensive. Than like getting your groceries at Kroger or something, right? So there is that, but like that downtown doesn't really have a grocery store. But if I lived right there, I would use that all the time, if not always, because I wouldn't have to go drive to the grocery store.
Right. Same with downtown Las Vegas. I don't really know of any supermarkets around there that it's, there's a lot of casinos.
Yeah, now I don't know Vegas well at all. So when you say downtown Vegas, do you mean, is that different from the Strip?
Or it is.
Yeah, okay.
It's at the north end of the Strip, if you go all the way there. And it's actually like its own part of town. It's older too. It's been around, since 1905 when Las Vegas was founded. It was the original town site before it expanded. But I think there's not been a lot of supermarkets there. And I'm looking at a map right now, and there's just really no like significant grocery store. It looks like there's a lot of some little markets here, which also can be good, but
yeah, and that's kind of what I was describing in Tucson. Though the one in Tucson is a little bit bigger than just like a corner store market, like what I'm used to from back east. Yeah,
it's more like convenience stores and like corner markets, and
a
good place to grab a couple of things. But you're not doing any serious buying fruits or vegetables there or anything like that. So.
Right. Yeah, whereas I remember when I stayed in Vancouver. Right, I was like right in central Vancouver where I stayed, and there was right across the street from me an IGA, which is a like big grocery chain, right? Like everybody knows what IGA is for most people. I didn't until I came out west, because I don't think they're really on the east too much. But anyway, so I stayed in Vancouver. There was an IGA right across the street, and I could just walk to it, and I bought, because I stayed in like an Airbnb, so I bought stuff to like cook a couple meals while I was there, so I wasn't eating out every meal, and I bought like fruits and veggies, right, and like eggs and anything that you would buy at a regular grocery store, but this place was just kind of jammed in this little corner in downtown Vancouver, but it provided full service, and that's what I'm getting at with this, is that it's hard to find. I think one of the hardest challenges of a 15-minute city is to have a full service grocery store because they take up a lot of space and they usually have giant parking lots. Right. And that's one of the biggest things. It's you can have employment centers, especially if you're working for whatever company owns like the biggest building in town, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you're working for local government, their offices will probably be centrally located, and if you're living in the center, you could probably get to your government office pretty easily. And then there's obviously going to be fun things to do downtown. Of any restaurant, bars, some downtowns have sports stadiums, even, right? But it's really getting that full service grocery store and not having to go super far out of your way. It's always what I've noticed is a huge challenge. Banks will be downtown,
right?
Just about anything else, but yeah, and I don't know with Phoenix. I can't remember seeing if downtown Phoenix has like a big grocery store or not. But
yeah,
and when I say that, I mean even just within that, like kind of that initial highway ring of Phoenix, like where the biggest grocery store is at. So I don't know. You can look that up on your phone too.
Yeah. It's interesting though. I think that it goes into land use a lot of times. Because you mentioned that like a lot of times big supermarkets have these big surface parking lots, and a couple things about that. One is that parking minimums really don't really help the 15-minute city idea because it spreads everything apart, right? So, but parking minimums are really based on, I guess, what the expected uses. But I think that a lot of times they are based on the worst case scenario, busiest times.
Right, based on Christmas, like the Monday before Christmas, right, and Black Friday, right, is like kind of what a parking lot will be designed for. You should go into explain what exactly a parking minimum is. I mean, it kind of explains itself in name, but just detail it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, parking minimums essentially cities mandate that a certain amount of floor area of your business merits a certain amount of parking spaces. Requires, I guess is what I should say. It requires parking spaces for a certain amount of ground floor area. And so we're looking, if you look at the code for cities, a lot of times it can be as much as like one parking space per 50 square feet, right?
Yeah.
And like we're talking like several thousand square feet of grocery store, or like 10,000 for like a big supermarket or something.
Right. Like a big Kroger.
Yeah, 10,000. So you're looking at huge surface parking lots that are going to probably take like twice as much of the surface area of your lot as like the actual store itself.
Right.
So I don't know the exact details of the numbers, but
and I think that depends on your city, like what they require per like surface area of your or footprint of your building.
Yeah.
And I did remember watching a while back a video about Fayetteville, Arkansas being the first, I think, if not one of the first, a very early adopter at least, if not maybe the very first, to remove parking minimums.
Wow, all throughout the whole city?
Throughout Fayetteville, Arkansas. I don't know if it's the whole city or if it's just kind of their main street, but it was a part of this like downtown revitalization. I think it was a Strong Towns video.
Oh, okay.
Did like a downtown revitalization video on Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is a college town. It's where the university is and everything, but their downtown was a little bit lacking, and so to kind of help bring in new businesses, they removed parking minimums.
See, and some cities actually have removed parking minimums for specific areas like downtown districts.
Right.
There have been other cities that have started to work on removing parking requirements for the whole city.
Right. Which is a huge undertaking, but there's your optimism, right?
There you go.
Like if you're working to remove that from your whole city's code, that's really something, because you could do an overlay zone, right, that has just no parking minimums in a downtown area. What we mean by that is taking existing zoning and just kind of, they call it overlaying because you just kind of add an additional layer of zoning on top of it that would supersede what already exists.
Yeah, it allows more things, more flexibility in terms of what you can build how you can build it.
So you might see that along a downtown that's trying to remove their parking minimums, but cities that are trying to remove it entirely, that's really something.
Yeah. I think another thing, though, so besides parking minimums is if you do have parking, there are methods to reduce the parking footprint, and you could do things like put the parking underneath the building, like a sort of a basement parking,
Right.
Even just one lot. Or I've seen in Portland, Oregon, a lot of buildings have parking on the roof. Also in Los Angeles, there I've gone to stores and they had a ramp that goes to the roof, and the parking is above.
Yeah.
And, especially when the land is at such a premium price in Los Angeles, it's dense. If you go to Los Angeles proper, a lot of it's been built up, in the early 20th century, and so you're really having to be creative and conserve space. Whereas in the Southwest, desert cities, there's still a lot of open space. So I think that people view it as more cost efficient to build service parking lots, but I mean, it's not always going to be.
It's not always going to be cost efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get in then to what it takes to maintain a surface lot that big, and then also the amount of roads then that you're going to have to build to that surface lot, and maintaining those roads over time. Like, it might seem like a cost efficient thing up front to not have to build a garage or an underground lot, but over time that's certainly going to cost you a lot in other ways. Right.
But then again, I can't really think of a lot of developers as being necessarily thinking about long-term things. Like, I want to just get the project done and then sold or moved on and then gone to the next project. So, I mean, when you think about it holistically, it makes sense when you think about it. Yeah, grand scheme of things over time and space. Yeah. Which is what cities should do with their regulations. That's the idea.
For sure. But to that effect, when you were talking about grocery stores in LA, it reminded me again of Vancouver. There was another grocery store that I visited when I was out there. Not just the IGA, but there was also a Safeway, which again, that's like a huge grocery chain, right? Like you see a Safeway everywhere. It's not just some little corner market. And this was a absolute full-size grocery store. The IGA was a little smaller. This Safeway was giant. And it was right in Vancouver, right next to Stanley Park. So if anybody knows Vancouver, you probably know which Safeway I'm talking about. If I recall, there was parking either above or below it, but I have memories of going on like one of those like airport sidewalks, like those like moving sidewalks at the airport that was taking me up. Oh, wow. It was not an escalator. It was a full-on like airport sidewalk because I guess people with shopping carts can't go on an escalator, right? So, and ADA and everything, right? Because it was like the only way to get there. So it was like a moving ramp. But I believe that they had that ramp because there was parking under it or above it or something, Something was going on, whatever. There was a very cleverly designed Safeway right in the middle of Vancouver. So, like, it can be done. Like, you can build a full-size grocery store right downtown. It can happen. And you see that progress starting to happen in areas like Tucson, but it's not quite there yet. But
no, I've seen that too. Even if you can't dig into the ground, I saw a Safeway in LA that it was kind of in a suburban area. It was in the valley, and it was essentially there was a parking garage below, but it wasn't under. It was like maybe half underground, and then the grocery store was above, and I think it might have been on a hill too, so you could have entered the store on one side from the ground level, and the other side would be like you drive in the parking area, and then you would take an elevator to the garage to the first floor of the store, which is only one floor, but like
right down ground level. So so like the point is that you can build a full service grocery store in a 15-minute city, right? And that feels like the biggest challenge of the 15-minute city is you can have your banks easily, you can have jobs within 15 minutes, but it's that, what else do you need in life? I don't know, recreation, fun stuff, and then
record store.
A little record store, right? You can have all that stuff easily within a 15-minute city. It's the grocery store has always stood out as the biggest challenge for me. Schools then too, I guess, right? And everything primary schooling if you have kids or are a kid or whatever. That's certainly also a challenge. But the one last thing I wanted to kind of get to before we wrap things up, because we're already at 25 minutes of talking. Yeah, I know, it's pretty fast. I mean, I could go on forever. But anyway, is okay, great. So you live in a 15-minute walkable area with a grocery store. How do you carry your groceries if you don't have an F-150?
Oh my god. That's a whole other can of worms. I feel like that would just take a whole...
Well, I'll tell you, I did, because in Canada there's no plastic bags. I think in the whole country, if not certainly within the city of Vancouver and British Columbia, but I did just get my grocery bag and carry it in my arms like a child and walk it across downtown back to my Airbnb. I know. You can do that still, you know. You can just carry your groceries. Now, if you don't want to carry your groceries, you could carry them on your back. I've put groceries in a backpack plenty of times. Or get a bike.
Get a bike and maybe get a bike trailer. Or
Right.
or you could have got an e-bike with a basket on the back.
Right. You get a buck-feets. Yeah, a little
Or a
cargo
bucket
bike.
bike.
Yeah. So, and then the point with that, right, is if you are in a 15-minute walkable city where you can get to the grocery store easily, you won't necessarily need to buy so many groceries that you think you need a Ford F-150 to bring them home.
Right.
Because you could shop for only a couple of days at a time.
Yeah.
Right, and this is what I have done, you know, when I've lived in more dense areas and everything is, and I tend to only shop for a couple of days at a time anyway, because I don't like to waste food and stuff, and I always am afraid if I shop for too far out, I'll end up overbuying, and then things will spoil in the fridge right before I can freeze them or whatever. So, but the ability to do that is so much easier when you live close to the grocery store. Then carrying them on a little basket in your bike becomes so much more realistic, because if you're only shopping for 2 or 3 days at a time instead of 7 or even 7 to 10 days at a time, right? But I would say that the typical like suburban family shops for a week at a time, right? Shops for 7 days at a time at the grocery store, and then you end up coming home with a lot of bags. I mean, I have distinct memories as a kid growing up in a suburb. Like when we would grocery shop, it'd probably be like once on the weekend, or if we had time during the week, because it would be less crazy in the store, that we would go during a weeknight. But that like unloading the cars out of my dad's Jeep was like an event. It was like a full-on event, and that
The family's involved, huh?
right, and that has like spurred on the like idea that you need an SUV to carry your groceries. But if you're in an area where you don't need to shop for so many days at a time, and even if you are buying 7 days worth of groceries, station wagon or a sedan will do you just fine.
Oh my goodness. Well, even a mini, whatever.
A Mini Cooper, what I used to drive.
Mini Cooper, or even a smart car.
Yeah,
It gets you the groceries.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't need to. You could just, or even your back feeds.
yeah.
The bucket could just carry.
I bet you I could fit a week's worth of groceries for a family of 4 in a box feeds.
Yeah.
I bet you I could do it.
Yeah, I'm sure you could.
Yeah, and again, if not, a very small car.
Yeah, absolutely.
A car way smaller than an F-150.
Yeah, well.
So, but anyways, the whole point is that it becomes even easier, and you're carrying a lighter load, no matter what, if you're only shopping for a couple of days at a time, and if you have the ability to do that. So, yeah, that's kind of an introduction to a 15-minute city. I know that you, in our notes for this, had some like links, some like resource links. If there's anything that you want me to put in the description of this, like kind of in the video, I will definitely do that, because again, the whole point of this like optimism idea is that you are able to enact some change. I definitely think I will link for Living Streets Alliance, because they focus on bikeability and walkability and rethinking the streets and everything. So they're an advocacy group in the Tucson area. But anyways, I know that you have some other info, so we'll try and link you some stuff so that you feel like that you can work towards making a change. But that's the whole point, is that this is not change that's going to happen quickly, but when you do see it, it's a really great thing, and it does happen slowly. And the point is that it does happen.
It does, and we can keep on pushing it in that right direction.
Yeah. So I think that's about all we've got. That's about all I've got right now. It's a solid 30 minutes. So with that, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time.